to Volya Radio. Slava Ukraini!
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I hope you're having a great day. And we're going to, oh boy, we have people wanting to speak. We have people wanting to co-host. I have a feeling this is going to be an exciting couple of hours. Alrighty. I think we have pretty much everything going as long as Robin gets up to co-host. And we will proceed then. There we go. We will proceed with a timestamp. And then I will hand it over to Ukraine Today, which actually is Ukraine Today is rather interesting, I think. Anyway, it is currently Wednesday, July 22nd in most of the world, but not all of the world. So we're going to check out what time it is where. In Sandy Balls in the UK, it is 12:01 a.m. And in Wankum, Germany, it is 1:01 a.m. In New York, Ukraine, it is 2:01 a.m. In the workers' paradise of Cockburn, Australia, it is 7:01 a.m. On the Kinki Expressway in the Osaka, Japan area, it is 8:01 a.m. Now we have to go to Cockwash Creek. Since we were in Sandy Balls in the UK, we have to go to Cockwash Creek. Just make sure that we get those cleaned off. Cockwash Creek, Australia, it is 8:32 a.m. And in Mount Buggery, Australia, it is 9:02 a.m. Now we'll come back to where it's Tuesday, July 21st. In let's see, Heart's Content, Newfoundland, it is 8:32 p.m. It is 7:02 p.m. in Satan's Kingdom, Massachusetts, where I hear they like to choke a lot of chicken. And in Gayville, South Dakota.
You know, he's never here when you make that crack. You really?
Oh, I'm sure he's heard it. I'm sure that he has heard it, but yeah, no, I'm sure he's heard it because I told him about it, and he has been here before when I said it. In Gayville, South Dakota, it is 6:02 p.m. And in Dickweald, Colorado, it is 5:02 p.m. In Whiskey Dick Mountain, Washington, it is 4:03 p.m. And in North Pole, Alaska, where I hope it's a little chilly, it is 3:03 p.m. Alaska, where Sarah Palin could see Russia from her house. She quit stalking me. I'm all good with that. And good evening, Robin and Alan. I hope you are doing well and that Satan's kingdom has not come to visit your house, as it has seemed to come to visit mine. And just a couple of days of it, we will survive. So yeah, that's why I picked that one. So over to you guys.
Oh dear. um Anyway, yes, this is a big day. We have a lot to discuss tonight, Alan. Alan has already put the proactive fundraiser post up in the nest. I'm going to be doing a match for anything that comes in the next 2 hours. A lot has gone on in Ukraine today. I think many people are feeling quite positive about things, and this is a good time now to help that final push. Ukraine is doing well militarily. They're doing well socially. They're doing well, in terms of government at this point. But the war is not won yet, and we want to give that last final push to help our friends from 18th Sloviansk Brigade of the National Guard, the electronic warfare guys who do so much good, for SBU Alpha and everybody else that's helped with this wonderful proactive fundraiser that stages money so that when needs come in, the money is there to meet them right away. So anyway, I will be haranguing you every few minutes about this for the next 2 hours. So please, go up in the nest and take a look at that and see if you can free up a little bit of money to help our brave defenders on the front lines in Ukraine. Hello there, Alan.
Hey, Robin. Great to be here on Volya Radio with you tonight because it really is a big news day. This, of course, could begin with the appointment of a new commanding general, General Drapatyi, and also a new commander of the ground forces in Ukraine. So it's not just the top commander of the military, but there's going to be new appointments throughout the military. We still don't know exactly where Mikhailo Fedorov will end up, quite possibly outside government. We don't know. But what a remarkable week it's been with Ukrainians on the streets demonstrating, even while under threat of Russian bombardment. As a matter of fact, in Kharkiv, because these demonstrations took place not only in Kiev, but in Kharkiv, in Dnipro, in Odessa, in Lviv, in uh, in
Um,
cities all
Practically
over,
everywhere. Yeah.
virtually everywhere. But in Kharkiv in particular, which is a frontline city, I mean a really frontline city, there was an air raid alert, and the demonstrators took their demonstration underground into the air raid shelters of the Kharkiv metro system, and that's where they kept their chants going. And the result has been, after 4 days of President Zelenskyy interviewing commanding officers throughout the military, listening to everyone, including General Syrskyi, including the former defense minister, Mykhailo Fedorov, there's a new commanding general of the Ukrainian armed forces. It's Mykhailo Drapatyi, who has quite an interesting background. If you know anything about the defense of the city of Mariupol, uh, that's where he was.
Yes, it's very interesting. Drapati is definitely in the mold of Fedorov. He is um, he favors an interactive kind of leadership. He favors decentralization, and he certainly has been very clear. He has a lot of respect from people who've served under him because he, while using good logistics and good strategy, he pays quite a lot of attention to protecting lives as much as possible. This was a criticism of Syrskyi. And yeah, I think it's interesting. Mocker said something a while ago. A few days ago, that she suspected that part of this was that Zelenskyy had sort of planned this, that in order to get rid of Syrskyi, it would be better to have the population behind him before he tried to do it. I honestly at the time thought, well, I don't know, I'm not sure he planned it that well, but I've noticed that some Ukrainians are starting to say the same thing. So who knows, and all of us outside of Ukraine, we don't have access to what, everything that's going on, but I think, it looks to me again like the last few upheavals we've had in Ukrainian government, that they may very well come out on the other side with a stronger, more responsive government. So I think it's uncomfortable for those of us who are used to. I mean, no matter how bad it is, we're used to in the United States to people being in office for for a defined period of time, and you don't do anything about it. This is not the way a parliamentary system works, and certainly Ukraine's parliamentary system works. But if we can get over our discomfort with that, I think that some very positive things have happened. Not the least of which, as you pointed out, Alan, is that people are out again. Um, people are it's not easy in the middle of a war, and people are working very hard to keep their lives together, but it is clearly a very large priority for vast numbers of Ukrainians. Not just that there should be peace, not just that their needs would be met, but that they live in the kind of country they can be proud of. That they live in a country that values human rights and values dignity and values representative government. And the fact that this is one generation after the Maidan, where we know, for the Heavenly Hundred, over 100 people were killed by government forces, possibly Russians, certainly backed by Russia under Yanukovych, that Ukrainians, the next generation, they have no fear of that anymore. They know what their government is about, and they know that that's not going to happen. And they're out on the street, and it really is admirable. And I think, it's interesting. I saw a post a little while ago. I don't recognize the poster, but it doesn't really matter because I think he made a good point. He said that some people, i.e., the Russians, are trying to say that Ukraine's government is in disarray. Everybody, it's all up in the air and they're fighting and everything. And President Zelensky, according to this understanding, is weak because he has allowed his opinion to be changed. And this commentator points out that no, it's exact opposite. President Zelensky is a strong enough leader that he's able to listen to what his people have to say. He's able to call in all sorts of stakeholders and discuss things. He had a huge meeting with most of the large manufacturers of military equipment in Ukraine, along with the frontline commanders. He listened to everyone, and as a result of listening and hearing people's concerns, he's made what I personally think, and I'm not a Ukrainian, so what I think doesn't matter that much, but I think Drapatyi is a brilliant choice. I have great hope that he will be able to shepherd Ukraine the rest of the way to victory. Now, back to you, Alan.
Thanks, Robin. Let's get Volya Radio's discussion tonight off to a start with Brian Porras. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick note to everyone in the space. If you could please retweet the space, that would be awesome. I would love to get, I just have the feeling it's going to be this especially interesting and informative show tonight, as they tend to be on Volya, on Ukraine Today. So, yeah, please retweet this space. That helps us get more people in here. That's what I had for you initially here.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. And as you retweet, put a mention that if you want to pick my pocket and double your donation to Ukraine and to our brave defenders on the front lines, they can come over here and make a donation to the Proactive fundraiser, where I'll be doubling everything for the next almost 2 hours. Thank you, Brian.
And I will say, this is not the first time that Robin has shown such extraordinary generosity. Robin has volunteered to match your contributions on days of rage and outrage, on days of celebration, and today on what I will call a day of really deep hope for the future of Ukraine. It's not an easy thing to change horses in midstream, and this is what President Zelensky is doing. It's the second time it's occurred in the course of this war. No one will forget that General Zelenskyy was replaced by General Syrskyi in 2023. And now I guess I would regard these appointments of commanding generals, Robin, as a kind of relay race, passing the baton from one commanding general to the next at just the right time. I think that General Zelenskyy demonstrated that Ukraine could defend itself well, and inflict really dire wounds on this invading Russian force. I think Syrskyi has led the Ukrainian military to this point that has accomplished two things. It has brought the Russian invasion to a standstill, and it has given Ukraine sufficient time and cover to transform the war by introducing drone warfare in ways that no one could have predicted even 2 years ago. And now Zelensky essentially was making a choice between a commanding general who understands this new kind of war, embraces it, and will promote it, and continue to learn how to fight it, and a commanding general who may well have been stuck in the past, certainly continued to use old style Soviet fighting tactics.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I suspect, when the history of this war is written, that Syrskyi won't come out that badly. I think he was a stop on the way. Even Mikhailo Fedorov today made a point of thanking him for his past contributions, and it's the Ukraine is fortunate to have a few really, really talented top generals who they can call on. And Drapatyi is I think Drapatyi is seems to be exactly what's needed at this stage of the war. So you know we and I think one of the things that we've talked about a lot is this unfortunate tendency of people outside of Ukraine to think they know better than Ukrainians, and to give them advice when not I mean, and it's sort of ironic too. So often it's people who don't speak the language, has never been to Ukraine, and really are hearing things third hand or whatever, don't understand the dynamic in the country, and certainly don't understand the enemy. And I think perhaps slowly we are seeing that Ukraine is a mature sovereign country. They know how to run their own affairs. They do it very well, and our job here outside of Ukraine is to support them, not to like George H.W. Bush, the chicken Kiev speech, Kiev, the Russian pronunciation, coming in and telling Ukrainians that they shouldn't want independence. I mean, seriously, but I think that's something we still need to work on, is making sure that people, just because they have a little bit of money or have a little bit of have weaponry that Ukraine needs, that should not translate into giving them advice about how to run the war. We've seen how that's worked in the past, and it hasn't been good. So anyway, back to you.
Well, like so many things that happen in Ukraine, you just have to wait and see. That's what it comes down to, really. That's what we've all been doing for the last 4 days. And I agree with you, Robin. There's a deep backstory here to events that culminated today in the replacement of one commanding general with another. It's a deep backstory that only Ukrainians can really understand. I can't understand it, not only because I don't have sufficient expertise in speaking Ukrainian, but I'm not in Ukraine. I don't know anyone who serves in the Rada. I don't know anyone who serves in Zelensky's government. I know ordinary Ukrainians, and I trust their opinions. I trust what they know, because they're not only there now, uh, they have grown up in Ukraine for 25 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 years. uh, they know what it's all about, and I don't. So I get to ask questions and to listen. We get to listen to uh, extraordinary people like Professor Hertzak. I mean, my God, that man knows stuff.
I know. We really are very fortunate. And one of the things that I'm sure it struck you, Alan, and it certainly strikes me, is Ukrainians by nature seem to be deep thinkers. You won't if you ask a Ukrainian a question, you're not going to get a fluff answer. And it's really, I've learned a lot from speaking to our ordinary Ukrainians. Also, if you go on YouTube, I mean, this is, where you see the divergence between what's happened in Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union and what's happened in Ukraine. You go onto YouTube, and you can see, well, Serhiy Sternenko is one, and there I saw something with Taras Chumut, the head of Come Back Alive, one of the biggest charities in Ukraine. and they discuss all of this with no holds barred. I mean, they name names. They don't take prisoners. They're very, very outspoken and thoughtful. It's not. They're not hatchet jobs. These are thoughtful discussions of the situation and the shortcomings and the strengths and whatever. But it's an amazing testament to the strength of Ukrainian civil society that you don't hear anybody saying, "Oh, that guy should be made to shut up," like you do here in the United States. People comment on things that people don't like, and people want to shut them down. You don't see that in Ukraine. There seems to be incredible. They value free speech more highly than we do in the United States at this point. And this is again something Ukraine has a new enough democracy and new enough freedoms that they really value them still, and it's definitely something we can learn from by looking at how things work in Ukraine.
Absolutely, Robin. And to listeners, explore some of the Ukrainian accounts on YouTube, some of the Ukrainian analysts and opinion makers. I guess they would be called influencers, but they're not influencers. I think of influencers as really superficial kinds
Kardashians.
yeah, well, right. I mean, there's nothing superficial about some of the Ukrainian commentators and analysts and activists that you can find on YouTube. And just because you don't know Ukrainian, you can accomplish two things. You can listen to the Ukrainian and become much better in pronouncing Ukrainian without actually speaking it. And you can read closed captions in English so you understand what the conversation is all about. You understand what the presentation is all about. And that's what I've been doing partly this week, Robin. And it's no different than thumbing through the bibliography of a favorite history book by a favorite historian. You pull on this thread and find so many other places to go. And you just you follow these sources in the bibliography, and pretty soon you find yourself in ancient libraries, hearing voices and reading accounts that you never ever expected you would put your hands on or that you would ever hear.
Yeah, it is amazing the amount of Ukrainian content that there is on YouTube. It's a wonderful confluence of people with deep thoughts who want to share them and are able to express themselves well, and extremely tech savvy population. So it works very well. It's and as you say, I mean, Ukrainian is a beautiful language just to listen to. They call it, this is Solovina. It's the song of the nightingale. That's how Ukrainians describe Ukrainian. So it's such a pleasure to listen to, and the same time, and the subtitles are not 100%. You sometimes, if something strikes you as a little bit odd, you have to think about it, and then you'll probably figure out the misunderstanding of the spoken word was. But it does pretty well, and you get a good idea, and it gives you a lot of. It's not the same as being Ukrainian, being in Ukraine, but it does. You can get a lot more of a feeling of what's going on by looking at that. And this reminds me, Alan, I really have to start looking at some of the Polish YouTubers because as you know, I've been very upset lately with what's been going on in Poland with the attacks on Ukrainians there, and I'm having a trouble trying to figure out how bad this is, how widespread it is, and it just occurred to me as I was talking now that would be a place to look at Polish YouTubers and see what they're saying. I suspect that, and I've heard from people in Poland too, that there's much more support for Ukraine in Poland than you'd think, because it's like Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's the big mouths who get the attention. It doesn't mean that they have a lot of support behind them. Anyway, that's a little excursus, but I'm glad that we've been talking about this because I'm going to try to educate myself a little more that way too.
Well, I do want to encourage listeners to come up to speak. I know that some of our listeners are in Ukraine today, right now, have been there for a while, and I hope we hear from you because demonstrations were occurring in Kyiv, as Robin said, really in almost every city around Ukraine. It was very clear what the demonstrations were about. Uh, they were all about supporting Mikhailo Fedorov, the defense minister. We still don't know where he will end up in the government. He really only wants to be minister of defense. He may not get that post back. I don't know. But it was very clear that the demonstrators on the streets wanted Syrskyi replaced. I think that's one of the interesting things that happened in the last week, Robin, since this Ukrainian government was replaced. And I just want to remind listeners it's in the Ukrainian constitution. When a prime minister resigns his or her post, every minister of the government must pass in their resignations as well. And that is what occurred. Now, it's also true that Zelenskyy uh, can accept all those resignations and then reappoint some of those ministers in a new government. He did not do that with Mikhailo Fedorov, the defense minister, who had become extraordinarily popular, but for understandable reasons. He promoted transformation of war primarily because it goes back to Chuck Farr's old saying, don't send a soldier where you can send a drone. The success of that strategy is really coming to fruition when you look at uh, Ragnar Gudmundsson's daily dashboard of statistics from the Zero Line. Engagements are actually going down somewhat. They are under the daily average. But Russian casualties, killed and wounded, are going up. You might say to yourself, well, how can this really happen? Uh, it happens because of the efficiency and the lethality and the success of Ukraine's drone warfare, the kind of warfare that Mikhailo Fedorov has promoted and that apparently General Syrskyi resisted somewhat. Resisted.
Yeah, that's well. They, they're two different generations and two different approaches to warfare that we're seeing here. One of the things that was interesting is I saw, as you mentioned, the demonstration started out because of Fedorov, and they morphed pretty quickly into demands for Syrskyi's relief, Syrskyi's firing. But a number of Ukrainian commentators have pointed out, and I think it's important to remember that, yes, Fedorov was important, and yet Syrskyi was important. But really, what these demonstrations were about was about continuing on a certain path, a path into the future, a path of open discussion, a path of democracy. So the kind of thing that started that became to fruition in the Revolution of Dignity, so that if Fedorov doesn't end up being returned as a Minister of Defense, that won't necessarily be the end of the world. I know Zelenskyy is talking about appointing him to some other position, which, and this, one of the things that, and, again, I only know this second, third hand, but one of the issues may have been, Fedorov is a young techie. He's a fast mover. He makes decisions and wants them implemented. And one of the things that things that tend to block things in Ukraine is if you can't get the Rada on your side. And it may be that someone else in a foreign minister may be better off, may have more, more of an ability to make alliances with people in the Rada to get things actually passed. Fedorov has tremendous skills in tech, in digital transformation that he ran so successfully, and with with dealing with Elon Musk and the Starlinks. I mean, we know many things that he's been involved in. That, and although I don't think he wants to go into another position, it may end up being better to have him freed up to focus on the tech stuff and not have to worry about the handing and doing the political stuff with Irada, which doesn't seem to have been one of his major strengths.
Oh, well, I think that's right. I mean, so Fedorov is 35, and that is young. Drapatyi is young too. He's in his 40s. Drapatyi has pretty much a lifetime in the military, and he's really, I think, I mean, much like Syrskyi. You know, Drapatyi has made his reputation on the battlefield. Now, I don't think that Drapatyi will ever pull down the nickname that Syrskyi did. Syrskyi was called the Butcher by Ukrainian soldiers. Maybe that's unfair. I don't know, but there is always some truth to such a nickname, especially when it comes from the zero line. Will Thiel, welcome. Go ahead.
Yeah, so minor clarification there. Drapatyi made his name or his entire career in the post-Soviet military. He never went to any of the Soviet military schools. He went to the Kharkiv School of Tanks and everything after. So he's one of the first classes of people that came up after the Soviet influence was formally gone, although there are issues that remain. And yeah, he's been in the military. He was the BMP-2 commander who drove through the blockade in 2014 in Mariupol to break the blockade down there. Served around, and this is all pre-2022, right? This is pre full-scale invasion. Served down in the defense around Bakhmut at that time. Probably one of the reform things that he's most known for is the investigation and trying to solve the issues related to the 155th Mechanized Brigade, where they had a whole bunch of all the AWOLs and desertions and problems related to that, which is probably why he embraces the changes to mobilization and or conscription rules and the service things, the issues related to pay and conditions for serving members. And that's probably the reform that's going to be the most hard to get through, as I spoke about the other day. And that's probably why that's the next big thing they need to knock off. So with he and whoever is going to be Minister of Defense need to work through that contentious. It's contentious, but it's ripe for opportunity. If Ukraine gets the changes to conscription, pay and conditions, and is able to fix that issue and make serving the military during time of war, uh, believe it or not, more attractive to Ukrainians, that will solve their manpower problem, which is the last big problem I think they've got as far as a modern military
Yeah,
goes.
that is true. Will, I just listening to an interview with Taras Chmut today, the from Come Back Alive, and he made a very important point, which I haven't heard before, which is that the way mobilization is working now, um, they get, let's say they get 3,000 people. He says half of them are going to be inappropriate, are going to do everything they can to get out, are going to not, or not. So that leaves about 1,500. Of those, only a small number fit into where they need people and have the requisite training and everything. So he was talking about the fact that even, getting the numbers is not the issue. It's getting the quality and these new then things that Fedorov was working on, the things that Drapatyi seems to be in favor of. Well, even if they don't hit the numbers they're talking about, if they're getting more qualified people, people can really fill the positions that they need, that this is going to make a big difference. Yeah, back to you, Will.
That's true, but you make the quality you want in a conscript army, of which America, Britain, everybody's had conscript armies during times of warfare. In fact, the United States had 62% of its of its army was made up of conscripts during World War II. The difference is that Ukraine doesn't have a national federalized means of basic training. So you get basic training to whichever unit you go to. Some of them now are pretty popular, as of in the Third Corps, but the others don't. So when the way your draft board used to deal with conscripts, and going forward, I refuse to call what Ukraine's doing mobilization, because I want to separate it mentally from what Russia's doing. This is not mobilization. This is screening and conscription. So when you get conscripted by your draft board, they call you up, and they tell you to report, and they assess you. And you're right, a certain number get thrown out in assessment because they don't meet the criteria of people they want. Sometimes that's health. Sometimes my father was conscripted and sent home by his local draft board. These draft boards should be a little bit thinking, a little bit intelligent, not automatons. They sent Tom home because the guy said, "What are you doing here, Tom?" And he said, "Well, my number came up. I got drafted." And he goes, "You've got 3 children at home and one on the way. Get out of here." Right? There's if you're so there are criteria that they use to assess people, not of all of which are medical, and then they screen those people out. But the remainder that they have there, that they're going to take, they don't worry about what skills and qualifications they necessarily bring to the table. We'll figure that out after basic training. Basic training is where everybody learns how to kill Russians, and everybody learns how to move under fire and put on a tourniquet and all the basic stuff you need to do. That's why it's basic training. Then at the end of basic training, they assess you for what your other skills and capabilities are, and they move you to where they think you're going to be most effective for them. Right? That's if you're a conscript. If you're a volunteer, you go through all that same training, basic training, but then you go where you picked prior to joining up with the army. This is the trick. This is the key to getting conscription and basic training federalized and getting it right, so that it's not seen as a death sentence when you get
Yeah, yeah.
conscripted.
And Will,
Um,
thanks. Yeah, I who was speaking about volunteers. You're right. I wasn't clear on that.
It's both, right? You get more volunteers if you make conscription more attractive to the people who have to do it.
Yeah, 100%. And as you're saying, I know, because I know of a couple of people who are staying out of the way of the draft board, however, and there is a fear, there's this idea that if I get drafted, I'm going to be dead immediately. I mean, like what happens in Russia, really. That's something that has to that I think there needs to be more emphasis on the fact that you will go to a place where, and it should work this way. You'll go to a place where you can contribute. You're not going to be sent with no training to the front the way the Russians do it. But there's a lot of fear about that, partly from things not the conscription process not being improved as quickly as it could have been, but also there is still, a lot of Russian propaganda that's still coming in and influencing people inside of Ukraine, and they certainly push this message, which again is ironic because, like with so many other things, they're talking about what happens to Russians and trying to convince Ukrainians it's happening in Ukraine.
And for listeners here at Volya Radio tonight, look up into the nest. In addition to the fundraising opportunity you have, which Robin is matching. So if you give $5, it's really $10. If you give $100, it's really $200. If you give $1,000, it's really $2,000. This is thanks to Robin's generosity. That tweet is up in the nest, but there are a couple of tweets that give listeners some more information about the new appointed commanding general, General Drapatyi in Ukraine. A lot of people probably uh, will do a double take when they hear the Battle of Mariupol and see the date 2014 after it. And the reason why is so in 2014 this was the year of the Maidan, the year of the Revolution of Dignity, Robin, and it had repercussions all around Ukraine. There were separatists in Mariupol, and there was armed conflict there, right?
Yeah, that's right. And primarily, it wasn't separatists. Primarily, it was Russians
Oh,
who
oh,
infiltrated. There were some people who collaborated, but it was more Russians than not. But yeah, this was. I mean, what happened was during the Maidan, with Yanukovych. Was thrown out of office. He fled. Before he fled, though, in his first few years as president, he had pretty much eviscerated the military. There was not a lot left. I mean, this group that with Drapati in command that liberated Mariupol was able to, but the military was in a very sad state. This is when the invasion started. With the invasions into the Donbass, the annexation of Crimea, a time I might add when if the rest of the world had stood up and said, you can't do this. This offends the international order. This is illegal in every sense of international law to go marching into a sovereign country and taking parts of it over. This was where all of the suffering and destruction of this full-scale invasion could have been avoided if the Allies, if NATO, if everyone had stood up at the time and pushed back against Russia and made it clear to them that this was not going to stand, but it didn't, and so this is where we're here now.
absolutely important point, and I agree, Robin. I used the word separatists, and I meant to say little green men. Uh, 2014 is the year that Putin annexed Crimea, and it is the year that this Russian-inspired uh, war in the Donbass really got moving. Uh, and this is the conflict that these successive Minsk accords or agreements attempted to settle year after year after year, only to have Russia violate them time and time and time again. So it's a good the appointment of General Drapatyi is a good entree into some recent Ukrainian history, which is worthwhile for everyone, so that you are up to speed about what is happening today. There's other big news. I regard it as big news, Robin. That's occurring right now, uh, not only in Ukraine but in Washington D.C. of all places. It appears that the Senate will, mm, I say, relatively soon. So I'm going to say maybe before they go on their August recess, maybe they will take up the Ukraine Support Act. This is a bill that was passed in the House. This is the bill that was actually passed in the House by what I would call uh, popular acclaim. So a majority of members of the House of Representatives in the United States signed uh, a piece of paper that said, "God damn it, we want to vote on this," and it was forced to the floor and passed. It would mean uh, additional funding for Ukraine at a critical time. So, in a way, Robin, it mirrors your generous matching contribution to War Doggo's fund today. It's a way to show Ukraine we support you right now when the war is changing so dramatically in your favor.
Yeah, that it is true. It's this business in Congress has been really frustrating. Though you sort of get the feeling as you were talking about this, I'm thinking, gee, I hope they get this. I hope they manage to get this passed before the war is over, because it has taken so incredibly long. But yeah, it at least is getting somewhere, and passing it will be an important statement, at least. As I understand it, though, Alan, I think it still leaves discretion with Trump about whether the money's actually spent. Though, is that? I hope I'm wrong about that.
I'll have to take a look into that. I don't know. I mean, there are various bills moving through Congress that will support Ukraine. There's the sanctions bill. This is different from the Ukraine support bill, and not much gets done in Washington D.C. in the summertime. When August rolls around, it's too hot to work, and Congress goes on a seasonal recess. So,
That reminds me of that wonderful song in 1776 about all the flies in the Continental Congress. Do you remember that? It's hot as hell in Philadelphia.
well, it was not only as hot as hell in Philadelphia, it's as hot as hell in Washington.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
both Philadelphia and Washington suffered from malarial outbreaks. That was part of the 18th century in those two places, and the 19th century for that matter.
Wow, that's interesting. That I didn't know. Um, yeah, well, hopefully, one of the other things that we saw today, I mean, aside from the United States at some point will get themselves together to get that money into Ukraine. But let's see if I can find this now. The IMF has approved the next tranche of, oh, I didn't bookmark it. That was stupid. Anyway, the next tranche of money, 800 million, something like that, saying that Ukraine has not hit every benchmark, but they've substantially hit them enough to release that next part of that several $billion loan that the IMF has guaranteed. So this is a positive thing too.
It's very positive. Look, the news is primarily positive for Ukraine today and now. I think that everybody's going to be watching military action, especially over the next few days, the next few weeks, etc. I think we can certainly anticipate another massive Russian ballistic missile attack on Kyiv. And this was just a few days ago. In less than an hour, Russia launched more than 50 ballistic missiles, primarily against Kyiv. And Kyiv and all of Ukraine is defenseless right now from ballistic missiles because there is such a shortage of Patriot interceptor missiles. And there's nothing Ukraine can do about that.
Yeah, that's right. And the shortage is in Ukraine. The shortage is not, the United States in this totally unnecessary war with Iran has wasted massive numbers of patriots, but we still have bunches of them. And there are other countries. I know Poland transferred 3 patriots a few weeks ago, which is not very much, but there is talk about them transferring more with the assurances that the United States will get replacements to Poland immediately if there's ever a need. I'm not sure what's happening with the other allies, because Britain has a bunch of patriots. A lot of places have a lot of patriots, and they would need to be replaced. But I know that who is it, Northrop Grumman, whoever makes patriots anyway, is it's not them anyway. That they're trying to ramp up production some, and they're also, this I find interesting. They've also announced that they're going to be making a new Patriot that's half the that's cost half of what the Patriots do now. I believe it's 2 million per missile rather than 4 million. This, I think, I mean, first of all, this is a good thing. Maybe they'll be able to get more of them out, but also
It begs the question: why not
That,
do
yeah,
that in the first
precisely.
place?
Two questions. There's that, and the other thing is, if it weren't for the fact that the Ukraine is rapidly working on developing their own patriots, would the United States or would that company have ever thought that, gee, maybe we better be turning out a lower cost one so we don't completely lose the market once Ukraine is making their own cheaper patriots? But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Lockheed Martin that manufactures the
Yeah, I think
Patriot.
so.
And why haven't they done it for half price before? It's not like this is a summer sale that Lockheed Martin is offering. It is because they wanted to make money and they had a guaranteed contract. And if they said it cost $4 million an interceptor missile, that's what people paid for a Patriot interceptor missile.
Yeah, that's right. By the way, I saw something today that said Hegseth is all upset because apparently the Pentagon has run out of money. I mean, come on. This is the home of no bid contracts, and you do remember the $800 toilet seats from the Vietnam era, right?
I do remember those toilet seats, never got to use one, but I think Pete Hegseth has spent all of his money on testosterone, apparently, and
You know,
not necessarily for himself.
well, who knows? Oh, don't get me started on him and homoeroticism among MAGA and everything. Okay, never mind. Back to Ukraine.
Well, back to Ukraine and back to Ukraine in I'm sorry to say, Robin and Will and Prince and Lexicon and all of our listeners, in a very serious and sobering way. Wars are filled with statistics, and you can see now up in the nest a tweet from um, the Ukrainian armed forces, and this is about the casualty rate of Ukrainian civilians. So we have seen this increasing terror war on Ukrainian civilians everywhere. I mean, any Ukrainian city you know the name of is a frontline city, whether it's Odessa or Kharkiv or Lviv. It is a frontline city. Some cities are actually under artillery bombardment. All cities are under threat of ballistic missiles and drones and cruise missiles. The cities, especially in the east, like Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, but also Zaporizhia, Dnipro city, they're all under threat of glide bomb um, assaults as well. So you can see the terrible toll that this takes on Ukrainian citizens now. It's very plainly put in the first half of 2026. Um, Almost 1,400 Ukrainian civilians were killed, almost 8,000 wounded. And in this 6 month period, this is many, many more than in 2025 or 2024. And in so many areas of Ukraine, Ukraine is defenseless. And I saw, I think it might have been Rima, the frontline medic who's spoken here on Volya Radio before, Robin. Uh, the advice that she gives to civilians is please go to the air raid shelter. If you have time, get there. And please get the first aid training you need now. Get your tourniquets and understand how to stop bleeding. It is that serious in Ukraine cities.
Yeah, yeah, no, that is true. As you're saying, I mean, it practically every place in every city in Ukraine is, as you're saying, is a frontline city. Um, and the thing to remember too is it's not only, I mean, there's been a terrible, terrible death toll of civilians, of people who really are not supposed to be aimed at in a war. The war is supposed to involve military. Um, And not only I think we've lost 10 more Ukrainians in the last day or so in attacks on Dnipro and Kharkiv and Kiev again. But it's even people who are not physically hurt in attacks. The psychological toll this is taking is really it's exhausting. It's people are it takes in under these kinds of circumstances, it takes a tremendous amount of self-discipline and energy just to try to act as though you have a normal life, and especially if you have children. I consider parents of young children in Ukraine to be some of the biggest heroes. Those parents who still manage to do birthday parties, who manage to bring their kids to enrichment activities after school, who managed to have a normal family dinner every night, and try to give their kids some kind of a normal life. It's really it's a very, very hard thing. And I think Ukraine is very aware of this and is doing as much as they can. The psychological support you see when you're in Ukraine, it's really very touching. I mean, people try to hold each other up just generally, but also in practically every online, access online, like the program that tells you, about air alerts and that kind of thing. All of these things, there's always a part that tells you how to get psychological help if you're having trouble. There's a tremendous amount of outreach that way. The resources are a little bit limited because Ukraine is not incredibly wealthy country, and they haven't they you need trained people. The Ukrainian Catholic University has a very active training program to train people counselors and psychologists to help people. But I not to go on at great length, but just this is something to always remember when you see casualty numbers for each person listed there as injured or God forbid killed. That person is the whole world. That person has relatives. That person has neighbors and friends. So the effect of one person being killed can affect 100 people, and it's just important to keep that in mind when you see these dry statistics.
Well, that's absolutely right, Robin. We when more than a year, well, it was a year ago, let's say 10 months ago, when I was last in Ukraine. You've been in Ukraine since then, but we visited a hospital in Lviv, and it's extraordinary in this way. It demonstrates everything you were just talking about, the support that is available in Ukraine. So this happens to be a hospital in Lviv, the far western part of Ukraine, and it had some of the most advanced um, therapy for amputees that I have ever seen in my life. And when we watched the therapy session taking place on this automated machine that is intended to replicate your gait if you have lost a leg or both your legs. The machine helps you regain the ability to walk, but uh, also to use your entire body as you always did when you had your legs.
Yeah,
And when I say your personal gait, it is about who you are, your weight, your height, etc.
yeah,
Lost you there for a moment, Robin. I have a feeling you might be getting
yeah.
a phone call.
No, no, no. My mic just went off all by itself. Sorry. Thank you. One of the things that you notice in Ukraine is, as opposed to the people I see, and I live in a big city. I do see some amputees occasionally with the prostheses, invariably limping very badly or hanging over a walker or something like that. In Ukraine, you will see, and that I don't. I, I saw, I mean, at UKU, with Ukrainian Catholic University, you see a lot of amputees because they run special programs, and there's, especially in the summertime. I and many of these, mostly men young men who have prostheses, if they didn't have a shorter leg on their pants, you wouldn't necessarily know they had a prosthetic because they have been trained to walk so well. And this is because of these, of these rehabilitation programs. I mean, it really is an incredible testament to Ukrainian abilities and their determination to make the most of each life. That in the middle of this war, they've ramped up this incredible rehabilitation program throughout the country. And if you remember, Alan, the name of that hospital, there are two hospitals in Lviv. One is from the Buffett Foundation called Superhumans, an amazing place. This one that Alan was talking about is funded by the Lviv municipality, and it's called Unbroken. And I think it's such a perfect name for the place because people may be missing legs, they may be missing arms, they may have, have be blind, they may have had damage to their ears or whatever, but they're not broken, because of the rehabilitation and because of a society that has learned very quickly to accept people with disabilities, to accept them as full members of society. So this is just another place that Ukraine deserves a tremendous amount of admiration. This is not a country at peace. This would have been hard enough to do in a country at peace, but they've managed to do this in the middle of this genocidal war. It's breathtaking.
And that's another reason why listeners should be tapping on that first tweet in the nest and making a contribution. I'm not saying that your contribution goes to uh, these hospitals. It does not. It goes to support that you can read about and to protect Ukrainian soldiers on the front, to give them the gear they need. It's not lethal gear. It's everyday warfighting gear. It's gear that will save their hearing. So take a look at that first tweet in the nest. Read about what War Doggo is pulling together to send to the front lines. Robin, I think Volya Radio has supported War Doggo through Give Butter for a couple of years now, and I would hesitate to add up the support that we have gathered together for him, but it's pretty significant. It's in the tens of thousands of dollars, thanks to the generosity of our listeners, and also thanks to the generosity of Robin and other co hosts here on Volya Radio who have volunteered to match contributions. Robin is matching your contribution here tonight. So if you give $1, you're giving $2, $5, $10, $10, $20, and it all adds up much more quickly than you might think.
Yeah, that's right. And one of the things that War Doggo points out in his in the write up for this proactive fundraiser, War Doggo, by the way, who we've worked with from the first day of Volya Radio, and certainly on our previous site too. We've worked with him we know him well. We've worked with him for a long time, but he points out something, and this is true to us too, that the people we help are not faceless units. These are our friends, our brothers and sisters standing on the front lines, he says. And these are people we know. These are Andriy from the 18th Slovyansk Brigade of the National Guard in the Electronic Warfare Unit. He comes on quite a bit. I'm often with mockers. We hear him. He's a wonderful guy. He's given us a lot of his time, and it's truly inspiring to hear from him. The 95th Brigade of the 13th Battalion of the National Guard under Danilo Zubko is a young rising commander. I think we've had him on. I certainly know about him. Another amazing person. SBU Alpha, which needs no introduction. I mean, they do incredible work. Plus many others that War Doggo. We have a personal relationship with War Doggo. We know him well. We absolutely trust him, and we know that he does good things with the money we raise, and he works with people that he knows also. So yeah, it would if you're able to donate, it would really make a big difference. And leave a note. We've talked about this before. The guys these donations go to, they see these notes, or they're brought to their attention, and it really makes a difference. So we've heard more than once saying that the money is important, the money helps a whole lot, but knowing that we haven't forgotten them makes a big difference too. And Alan, I just noticed something here that this is from a couple of days ago, but we actually have a $50 donation, which has a note in it in Polish saying your freedom and ours, Slava Ukraini. So that's just a beautiful expression of support from Poland as well. So let's see if we can get some support from all of you guys here. Thanks. Back to you, Alan.
An expression of support and solidarity, because the relationship between Poland and Ukraine is so important. It has been under so much stress lately. I'm glad Will Thiel is coming back to talk to us, Robin, because I have a specific question for him. But first, I'm going to let him say his piece. This is a question about the oil refinery in St. Petersburg. Will, go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, look, I just want to thank Robin for doing another match, and note based on that last donation, folks, we've been told from War Doggo, we've been told from Andre, we've been told from Volodymyr Gurza, everybody who comes up from Ukraine, and when we go over there, that if you put a $5 donation in, or sell your ex-wife's house and put the whole balance in as a donation, whatever you do, put a personal message on there too, because that message will mean, in some cases, as much as the monetary value of your donation to the folks that are on the front line. The continual sentiment that was expressed to us that the external support is so important, so that everybody at the front line knows that nobody's forgotten about them.
Will is absolutely right. Write your own personal message. So, Will, here's a question that has popped up on the very last Indications and Warnings episode. And someone is saying, Scott Ritter, who I don't know who Scott Ritter is, but this poster says Scott Ritter, a
Pedophile.
military
Massive pedophile.
expert. Okay. He's described as a military expert. Apparently I don't keep up with the news. So he made a YouTube video saying that the Ukraine attack was pitiful. The explosive used in the attack on the oil refinery in St. Petersburg amounted to little more than a firecracker, and it is only a short amount of time before Russia prevails. So this sounds like a
Also a massive vatnik, by the way.
Vatnik to me.
No, this guy's a massive vatnik, as you can tell from that message. So, Will, what do you think? You think that was a firecracker?
Oh, okay. So here's the thing with the non-judgmental details about that. I'm currently just looking up I'm currently looking at firms to see if I can confirm whether or not Kirishi, which is the refinery near St. Petersburg, is still down. If it's still totally cold. So Kirishi was last struck by Ukraine on in that May period, and it wasn't hit with just one, but multiple drones at the time. And Ukraine has upgraded these drones. The FP1 now carries its fuel tanks in its fuel in its wings, and so this is one of the first of the refineries struck on in the May to June campaign when we were there, when I was there in Ukraine, and multiple strikes on Kirishi on the 5th of May, and that refinery is still showing cold, totally out of service on my map, Alan. So I would say Scott Ritter is his position is not supported by the facts.
That's a good way to put it.
Oh, and by the way, he's a convicted pedophile twice.
Exactly.
He's a former Marines colonel, whatever. He's totally in the bag for, like McGregor, for Russia, and he regularly frankly he should be in prison if he returns to the United States. I think they have taken his passport and not allowed him to travel, but he's a massive disinformation spreader. And if you were to if you were to bet on who's going to be more right about refineries, Scott Ritter or me, I'd probably bank on me.
That's good to know. I would say you are probably marginally more trustworthy than a serial pedophile Vatnik. Yes. Okay. Is Alan off getting a glass of wine or something? Let's see. Oh, very nice. Oh, guys. Oh, my goodness. Thank you. Donations are coming in now and beautiful messages. Here, I want to read a couple of these messages out. These are the messages that our dear friends on the front line in SBU Alpha and in 18 Slovians are going to see. One of them is thank you for protecting our freedoms. Absolutely right. Okay. And the other is history will show that every brave Ukrainian freedom fighter has helped protect democracy all over the world. Slava Ukraini, beautiful, beautiful. Another, thanks for the match. On to Ukrainian victory. A victory for democracy anywhere is a victory everywhere. Beautiful. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Alan is, I see Alan is having to recycle. He lost audio. So this gives me time to talk about other stuff. Let me just pull some news up. I had a couple of news items we haven't gotten to yet. Let me just see. Oh, what's been going on in Crimea? This is interesting. We've been seeing that that they're. Well, that was rude. Alan, are you back now? Do you have audio?
Yes, I do have audio, and that was rude, Robin. And as we say in Maine, this is Volya Radio Pat de, because we speak both Maine and French here.
Oh, thank you. Yes, guy. I was in the middle of reading out some of the messages. Thank you. We've got a number of donations that come, and you guys are really great. We're a small group, but it really, I'm personally touched by how people are responding. Thank you. And I know War Doggo is going to be happy, and our friends in these frontline units. It's going to make a big difference. I know Andrei in the 18th Slovians, the electronic warfare unit, is doing some really cutting edge stuff, and he needs certain equipment to continue with the work that he's doing. And this money will definitely help get some of what he needs to get those next generation electronic warfare uh, uh, whatever you want to call them, units, whatever, these proof of concept examples done so that they can show them, to the higher ups in the military and see, about getting them more widespread. Anyway, but we are back, Alan. So I think were we about to? I'm not sure where we were at this point. I'm going to hand it back to you, Alan.
Well, I'd like to go back to Will, and just to go back probably to something you were saying, but I couldn't hear you. Is the refinery in St. Petersburg still burning? I guess it's not burning any longer.
I don't see the main the ground flare and the high pressure and low pressure flares are not in operation at Karishi. I see the refinery as totally cold.
This is what I love to hear: a refinery totally cold. And
The
now,
second largest refinery totally cold.
and the strikes on the St. Petersburg refinery occurred when Putin
Fifth of May.
was holding the his equivalent of Davos, right?
No, not correct. The 5th of May is when they struck, right after they struck Primorsk and Ust-Luga. They then struck the Yaroslavl, and Kirishi refineries to really put a crimp in where that crude oil, the West Siberian crude, could go, and that caused Russia to shut in about 400 wells in West Siberia. So they were causing hitting the major refineries and causing a crude disruption at the time. That happened on the 5th of May. So Ritter couldn't be more wrong here. He couldn't be more wrong. Not only was it hit with multiple drones, those drones were effective enough to shut it down from the 5th of May until now. So, and this is just after the Kirishi refinery had said that it was going to take its entire production of gasoline, as they were allowed to export it, and export the entire production volume of gasoline from that refinery was going to go to sale to raise more money because the company was in significant trouble. Look, I just say, outside of his being a twice convicted pedophile, nothing in the facts support what Scott Ritter's saying.
Well, this is why I love you. My car needs an oil change. The moment I made the appointment for the oil change, I thought, I should just ask Will Thiel. He knows everything there is to know about oil. But a more serious point is that Ukraine has really interdicted the Russian oil economy. It struck at least 10 refineries, and estimates now range between 40 and 60% lower refining capacity in Russia. I think this is having a devastating effect inside Russia. We know about the long lines for gasoline, but I also think it is having an effect on how Russia is waging the war against Ukraine. You put together this strategic attack on Russia's economy with the logistical attack that Ukraine's been carrying out in occupied Ukraine and just behind the zero line. And suddenly, all the gears of Putin's war machine are are seizing up, and this war is not going to continue.
Minor clarification there, Alan. I don't know everything about everything. I just guess stuff correctly, and I did work in it for 35 years. And I never ever claim I'm an expert, but I do read. And the other clarification is that 29 of the top 34 largest refineries in Russia have been struck since the beginning of May.
Well, part of it is that authoritative voice, Will. You sound like you know what you're talking about. But so I have been reading, Will. I mean, is this the case? I have read in a couple of places that the Russians are beginning to have to cap some of these wells because they have no place to put the oil.
That is true. So the West Siberian wells some West Siberian wells were shut in during the May activity, and then went the strikes in on the Urals crude, particularly the Omsk refinery going down, which is also still down. The and the ones in Tardistan, the Urals crude wells in Tardistan have been being shut in, some of them. And the way this is happening is Lukoil a big company, Lukoil had to shut in some wells in West Siberia in May because of those attacks. There's just no place to send the crude. If your refineries can't take any crude and your export terminal has been knocked out, you've no place to store it. They just don't have as many tanks in Russia as they normally as a producing country normally would. So the it happened at a big company first because that's dominated by big companies. Down in Tardistan and the Urals crude, there's a plethora of small little E&P companies down there that are trying to produce wells, but they're usually marginal producers. And when times get tough, they're the first ones that are told, we can't take any more crude from you, and they have to shut in. Those little producers, while they're each individually very small, they make up a significant portion of the overall production down there, and they don't have the kind of capital to do workovers and stimulation once the crude is now once again needed. So I think the small producers being shut off in Tardistan will have a larger effect overall on production of Urals crude than a large producer shutting in wells in West Siberia does.
So, Will, correct me if I'm wrong, but these Siberian wells that Russia has, tried to magnify in its oil production and its oil economy, these wells are costly. They're finicky. They are difficult to drill and then to pump oil. And Russia is dependent primarily on Western companies like Schlumberger, and Schlumberger may still be doing business in Russia.
Not maybe doing business. Schlumberger, a U.S. listed company, and Weatherford, another U.S. listed company, have expanded their operations in Russia in hope that they gain a monopoly footing. And they've been importing new equipment. They've been transferring technology. They're expanding because they think they're going to get a monopoly, and eventually this is going to pay off for them. But it makes no sense. If I was an American citizen and had even one share of Schlumberger or Weatherford, I would go to their annual meetings and ask them what the hell they think they're doing, because something like less than 4 or 5% of Schlumberger's profits. This is a worldwide, one of the big three well services company worldwide, and they're making less than 5% of their profit off of these operations in Russia, uh, and they can't get the capital out till after the war is over and Russia releases capital controls. They're going to get nationalized. Why ruin your entire worldwide reputation on a few $1,000,000 that you think you're going to make, or even if it's $1 billion in Russia long term, they think they're going to make? Is it worth the worldwide reputation of your company entirely?
Who would want a monopoly in Russia? In a monopoly game, it would be like owning Baltic Avenue and then converting every other deed around the board into Baltic Avenue. So you'd own Baltic Avenue on one side of Go, and you would own the renamed boardwalk on the other side, Baltic Avenue. Who would want a monopoly in Russia? I think I'm going to write a letter to Schlumberger.
Well, the question is who under the age of whatever age we are. I don't even know what you're talking about at this point. I do miss Monopoly.
Well, there's that. I always try to buy the utilities and the railroads. Brian Porras, go ahead, please.
Oh, it looks like he just got dumped down to listener. Brian is always driving somewhere. So Brian, come on back up again and we'll go back to you. Alan, since Brian is not up at the moment, I wanted to just mention a couple of things that have been happening in Crimea lately. I mean, we do know that Russia's hold on Crimea is getting less and less sure. They have taken it upon themselves to outlaw the big Tatar. It's called Crimean Solidarity. It's a humanitarian, it's a human rights movement. They, of course, were never very happy about them, but now they've labeled them as foreign agents. So they've had to shut down entirely, which means that a lot of the good that they were doing is they're not able to help anymore either. The other thing is Ukraine has published an emergency guide for residents of occupied Crimea about how to prepare for war within inside of Crimea, how to protect themselves, how to deal with having to pass Russian security lines, what to do with your phone and stuff so you don't get caught with things that'll cause you problems. And it's printed in Ukrainian and in Crimean Tatar, not in Russian, which I thought was interesting. But they've printed up quite a few copies of this, which I suspect is being we'll be getting into Crimea. Let's put it that way. So it's just it's interesting. Ukraine is preparing for when they take Crimea back over, and I think it's interesting. It was something that so long, people who know everything in the West who know nothing were saying, well, it's unrealistic for Ukraine to think they'll ever get Crimea back. Crimea will be part of Russia forever. Well, it looks as though Ukraine was right, and it looks as though and once Crimea is back in Ukrainian hands, I think that's going to be uh, toward the end of the war. I think that if nothing else, the shock to the Russian system of losing Crimea will have a major effect internally. Anyway, back to you, Alan.
Yeah, Crimea will be back as part of Ukraine for sure. We may talk a little bit more about that here on Volya Radio tonight. But I see Brian is back. And
I'm
Brian, go
back.
ahead.
I'm back. Yeah, sorry. I left my hotel room, went down the stairwell, and must have lost the connection. So, but I'm now outside of my hotel. I'm walking. I'm taking my evening
Holiday Inn
walk.
Express.
No, I'm at a Hilton. I'm at a Hilton. So I'm normally a Marriott guy, but I want
Ooh
to
la
stay.
la.
Although with the wind, you sound like our friend from Romania who's always out walk. I don't remember his name. Is always out walking in the wind on the Black Sea while he talks to us.
That's funny. So, Will, correct me if I'm wrong, but these Tatarstan oil companies are in a world of hurt because with nowhere to ship the oil, are they at the point now where they're starting to have to shut the wells down? Because we know that has implications. Because once a well goes down, my understanding is that if it gets shut down, it may never come back at all, or at least not come back to the pre-shutdown capacity, which is going to leave a legacy for the Russian petro economy. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, I mean, this is why I've been talking about the long, since 2023. The I said that the long-term signal we're looking for here, and the actual goal is to force Russia to shut in wells, because a shut-in well in Tatarstan or West Siberia, especially depending on the time of year, when you go to restart, it's not like turning a water tap on and off, right? You turn the water tap, the well down, throttle it in, and then close it off completely. And the reservoir tends to have some inertia to it, that when you start it up, when you try to turn that tap on again, and especially depending on the type of well it is, whether it's all under its own pressure or if it is gas lift well type, these things, when you shut in a well and turn it back on, you normally will get some, in this place, only about half the flow rate you got before. So the production of Russian wells that are shut in will mean that Russia's overall production capacity of oil will be permanently reduced, if unless they get in well services companies to do well workovers and stimulation efforts, which is why they've got Schlumberger and Weatherford in the country. Those two companies are going to be critical to assisting Russia to get back to full production at some point. And those two companies, frankly, are traitorous those are American companies, are going to be in there helping your adversary get their wells back to full production. But the little companies in Tatarstan, they probably can't afford the Weatherfords and the Schlumbergers. A million and a half per per well for workover. It's not the sort of thing they can afford. So it might kill those companies off fully, and then it'll lead to consolidation probably in the oil and gas industry in Russia, and those companies being taken over by Gazprom Neft or Tatneft or one of the other big companies.
Yeah.
But the oil's not lost; it's just can't be recovered as easily without a lot of capital expense, and Russia just doesn't have any working capital now to do this sort of recovery, which means their earnings will be down permanently until such time as they stop the war, and can commit capital to things they ought to be committing capital to.
And then these wells, once they get shut down, that means no revenue coming in, which means the workers at those even those smaller companies, what are they going to? There's nothing for them to do, right? If the well is shut down, you're not going to pay people to just hang out and
No,
do a
that's
soda
correct.
tube,
Those guys
right?
will then be, looking for a job or looking to sign contracts with the military.
Yeah, yeah. So just
But
um,
that will further eliminate that skilled capacity uh, from Russia's oil and gas industry.
yeah, which is another legacy of this, right? So yeah, okay. Just want to make sure I understood.
Robin, we're back here at Volya Radio with about 30 minutes or so to go here tonight, maybe a little bit more than that, uh, to to fill in some more time due to the interruption of our broadcast. I wanted to let folks know that tomorrow night, James Healy and I are going to be hosting a space here on Volya, same time, so 7 p.m. Eastern time for a couple of hours. So 1900 to 2100 Eastern time, with whiskey. Whiskey Tango Dog recently returned to his home in Canada from a humanitarian trip in Ukraine. He has a lot of good news to share, and that is one of the reasons that James and I wanted to connect with him here on Volya Radio tomorrow night. Same time, everyone, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And we'll learn a lot about uh, how Ukrainians are feeling right now, what's happening um, in supplying Ukrainian soldiers on the zero line and that kind of thing. And whiskey is one of those very uh, diligent, careful guys when he comes back from Ukraine, very concerned about OPSEC. Uh, Nothing we talk about tomorrow night is going to violate operational security. And this is something that we actually take very seriously here on Volya Radio, because sometimes we do know things that don't want to be broadcast.
Yes, that's right. And it's something we have always been tried to be very careful about. We do sometimes know things that it's better off not to share with, as Chuck calls them, our Russian listening guests. But um, yeah, it's certainly always worth erring on the side of caution with any of these things. And it's always nice to get a speaker who shares our sensitivities about the things. It makes it much less fraught anyway. Over to you, James.
Hey, yeah, thanks. I tried to put it in the nest twice. It looked like it took, and then it didn't. So I wondered about that, if you guys can put anything in the nest. But Tango Whiskey Dog is his full name, Twitter handle, anyways. So it'll be interesting. He's Canadian. He's volunteered, and he's back on our side of the pond. So it's a great time to talk to him if anybody's got any questions. And I think that we may be able to pump him for some Canadian questions because, Canada is having an interesting time, and a lot of it is because of their great support for Ukraine. So I'm in solidarity with Canada, but not my government. And so we share some of the same problems with Tango. Anyway, enough.
I'm looking forward to that space tomorrow night, James, and I think it's going to be a really valuable space for all of our listeners here on Volya Radio, especially this week when so much is happening in Ukraine. We've covered a lot of that news tonight. First, in part one of the broadcast, we spoke pretty extensively about the dismissal of General Syrskyi and the appointment of General Drapatyi as commanding general of the Ukrainian military. One thing I would caution listeners about, uh, there's one thing you can expect, and that is an outburst of Russian terror assaults on Ukrainian cities. So you can expect in the next few days a massive ballistic missile assault on Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities. This will be Russia's response uh, to uh, to Ukraine's change of commanding generals. What you shouldn't expect is any kind of dramatic news from the zero line. No dramatic changes in what is happening on the zero line or how Ukraine continues to fight and win this existential war against Russia. Don't expect that. Uh, Wait a few weeks, and I do mean a few weeks. James?
Well, yeah, that's right. There's 15 days left of the 40 days. So, yeah, definitely that. But I wanted to say Odessa is getting a spanking from Russia, and it's ugly. Of course, what are they hitting? They're hitting all kinds of civilian targets. So I wanted to say that. And then you started talking about don't look for anything dramatic along the front line. And I just want to test this because I wasn't sure if it was true or not that there's a boiling, maybe boiling is the wrong word. It's brimming up to the top cauldron that's going on in Lyman. In other words, there's a bunch of Russians encircled. Is this accurate news?
Well, I'm going to also rely on Will here, but I think not. Um, I conditions for the Russians around Liman or Lyman, and this is on the way to Sloviansk, so at the northern part of the arc of eastern fortress cities in Ukraine. It's been contested, honestly, for years. Russia made some threatening advances towards Liman. It's an extremely complex, complicated geography around that city. They have not succeeded in infiltrating any Russian forces into Liman. And I don't think there's been a Ukrainian counterattack that has cut off any Russian forces there. But at the same time, I will say, James, I could really be wrong here.
And you could be right. So thank you for answering it. I looked around for a few minutes and had to give up because I was out of time. So I stopped looking after two things that I saw, but that's not really enough from the sources that I saw. So thank you
Yeah,
for putting that one down.
yeah, this is always the problem, James, and the fog of war. You know that we hear things, and they may be right, they may not be right. Obviously, Ukraine is not going to be making too many official statements about a lot of this stuff because this information needs to be kept close to the vest as much as possible. So we just that's one of the things I think we've all learned in the last 4.5 years, that we have to make our peace with not knowing everything, and it's frustrating sometimes.
It's really frustrating. You know, it's not that much different than being around a kitchen table in 1943 somewhere in the United States or maybe in the United Kingdom with a big map of Europe on the wall and some pins in it. One of those pins probably would have been a member of your own family. His last reported position by his last delivered letter. It could be hundreds of miles wrong. And and the very next delivery of a letter could be bad news, and it might not even come from uh, your son or your husband who's fighting in Europe. It could come from the United States Army, from uh, the Defense Ministry here in the United States 70 odd years ago. And it's the letter you would not have wanted to get. So there's just so much we don't know about current conditions in Ukraine. What we do know is that from Kherson to Kamiansky, which is a good half of the zero line, there has been almost no report of Russian engagements, no Russian attacks. That doesn't mean that Russian drone pilots are not still trying to kill Ukrainian civilians in Kherson. It doesn't mean that there's not a humanitarian crisis occurring in Oleksandr, just within the city limits of Kherson. That's still happening, but there haven't been Russian military assaults anywhere from Kherson to Kamiansky. And that is what I would call, Robin, a kind of remarkable tranquility, probably caused by Ukraine's success in cutting off Russian logistics. Kherson is the farthest point of supply that Russia needs to deliver. I would hate to be a Russian soldier on the banks of the Dnipro River.
Yeah, that certainly is the case. Or a driver of a truck trying to bring trying to bring food or weaponry down that highway that the Kremlin says is totally under Russian control and seems to be every hour littered with more and more burning wrecks that have been drowned out of existence. Um, it's interesting. You talk about the lack of movement on parts of the zero line. I get the feeling that more and more, Russia is having to decide where to attack because they don't have the manpower, they don't have the weaponry that they need to be pressing this all over the place. The real issue, I think, at this point is if Ukraine can do something about protecting its cities from ballistic missiles. That seems to be that, and the glide bombs in the east too, and those are the two things that are the biggest problem at this point. The drones, I mean, some still get through, but they do very well generally at shooting them down. The ballistic missiles are the big issue at this point.
Yeah, the ballistic missiles. And again, this is the war Russia chooses to fight. It's a terror war against civilians. Make no mistake about it. There's nothing retaliatory about these Russian attacks with ballistic missiles and drones and cruise missiles and glide bombs on civilian targets all over Ukraine. This is not Russia retaliating for anything Ukraine has done. Don't fall in to that commentary, which is promoted primarily by Russian propagandists.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's anything that Ukraine does uh, is defensive. The retaliation is not an appropriate word, and as is escalation. You notice Russia never does anything that's called escalation, but every time Ukraine manages to defend itself a little more effectively, they start screaming about escalation. We've talked about this before, and I think we all of us try to be very careful with language because of that, because these, as they see, you see in the buses all all over Lviv. There's a sign. It says "Mova maya znaczenia," which means language matters. In this case, they're talking about speaking Ukrainian instead of Russian. But I think that this is something that we all need to remember and to be very careful not to unwittingly fall into using the language that the Russians are trying to define. And one of those is big examples, as you're saying, Alan, to call these things retaliation rather than a legitimate attack on an enemy, on an invading enemy.
Well, as General Hodges said, when you're being invaded, any weapon delivered to you is a defensive weapon. And I agreed with him in 2022, and I agree with him now. Um, the other thing I wanted to say about what is happening on the zero line, it appears that Russia is concentrating its attacks on Ukrainian positions between Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka. That's a very small section of the zero line. The zero line in Ukraine, when you consider its full length, it actually includes the border with Belarus, although that's very inactive and it's well defended by Ukraine. Uh, it winds around Kharkiv Oblast, which has some activity. So this is where Ukraine made its incursion into Kursk, but Kharkiv itself, which is a city of 1.5 million people, is under constant threat and is frequently hit with Russian bombs, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, even artillery. And then it winds down through the eastern fortress cities in Ukraine. So this is Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, Drushkivka, and Kostyantynivka. And from Kostyantynivka, uh, as the crow flies, maybe I don't know, 75, 100 miles to Pokrovsk, and then all the way down the length of the Dnipro River to Kherson, where it empties into the Black Sea. This is the longest front line of war since I would think the Second World War, Robin. And this is the front line that Ukraine both defends and attacks on. Most of the Ukrainian attacks uh, use drones today. It's a remarkable number, but since the beginning of 2026, Ukraine has struck 1 million Russian targets. This is in occupied Ukraine, it's inside Russia, it's along the zero line. It counts everything that has been verified by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense and General Staff. It's every single Russian soldier, every artillery emplacement, every fuel truck, every radar, uh, everything. And 90% of those strikes are carried out by Ukrainian drones. This is why the summer of 2026 will be looked at as the year Ukraine changed warfare.
Yeah, very true. That's it's I think many of us at this point are hoping that all of these changes and the things we see going on in Russia, the economy really going into the toilet, and their inability to make mobilization numbers, that all of this will have a quick influence on how they continue the war. Hopefully, they will not be able to continue much longer. The other issue, and I was listening to someone talking about this. The other issue that we're going to be facing very soon is going to be next winter, and it looks unfortunately like it's going to be, if this ballistic missile issue is not dealt with, it's going to be a very difficult winter for Ukrainians. So this is something, again, as we start thinking that we're seeing possibly the end of the war, it's very important to understand that we're not there yet, and we have to continue to help, to support, to push our governments as much as possible to do everything we can to get Ukraine to the point where Russia has been driven out, where Russia is not able to continue. J.D. Vance a while ago said something about how wars are always ended by negotiations. Well, this is absolute nonsense, as many people have pointed out. Many wars are ended by total capitulation of the losing side of the enemy, and this is what we need in this war. Russia needs to be rendered incapable of doing this anymore, and Ukraine is more and more in the position that they are beginning to bring the war home to the Russians, and hopefully we'll be able to finish it. So we have almost $200 has come in. Thank you very much. Some wonderful notes, Alan. You might want to take a look at later. If we get a little bit more in before the end, I'd appreciate it. But thank you so much, everyone who's donated, and for these beautiful notes. I know that the guys who War Doggo and the guys who get our help are going to really be touched by some of them. So thank you.
It's always wonderful to look at those notes. And I have to say that Give Butter, which is the service that War Doggo uses and that we rely on to deliver your donations to Ukraine. Give Butter is a wonderful organization. I love their emails. I love their newsletters. I do love to go online from time to time and read those comments, Robin.
Yeah,
So
I think I
let's go.
think you're talking about Sunflower Seed Ukraine, though. They're the ones that we get the newsletters from.
You're right. I'm talking about that, but sunflower seeds uses Give Butter, right?
Yes, that's right. Give
Yeah, yeah,
Give
they
Butter
work through
is
that.
like PayPal for nonprofits. So Give Butter is an incredible. It's a beautiful interface. The fact that we can put all this information up and see all these notes. But Sunflower Seeds Ukraine is a small charity located in Colorado. They do a tremendous amount of work. I mean, another one that punches way above their weight. They're great people. I've spoken with some of the people in that organization. They're really, really good folks, and they give War Dogo a platform so that he can raise money that is tax deductible for Americans because it's an American charity. So they're great people. Anyway, sorry, back to you.
And back to Will.
So I know it's not Accidental Ukrainian Day, but given the fact that this will all blow over before the next Accidental Ukrainian, I just have to say, I love Ukrainian demonstrations. Love, love, love them. I've been looking back. I know it's almost over now, and we'll just move on with the new organization and stuff. But you honestly should go back and look at the Ukrainian translations of some of the day four protests and where they've gotten to, because I mean they're obviously listening to the feedback, right? They're not just out there like automatons cheering. They get accused of being FSB plants and everybody paying them. Somebody shows up with fake money and hands it out. I mean, they're really funny, and it's like a festival. A woman showed up and had 4 kittens that she needed to find homes for, so she walked amongst the crowd and found these 4 kittens a home when she was advertising them. There's people handing out food. They're really moving with the conversation that goes. It started out as save Fedorov, and then it moved to uh, uh, get rid of Syrskyi. The whole don't give up on change and hope here that has progressed along. They've been answering their critics all along the way. Like Robin, when we were doing Accidental Ukrainian yesterday, there was a guy chipping away in the background at us, or me particularly. Um, on some of the things that and the they obviously listened to Syrskyi's op-ed or read his op-ed and came to the same conclusion I did, that it was disingenuous, that it wasn't focusing on the right things. It was cherry picking, and I'm glad that I'm able to sit back and take all this in, and I'm very happy when I can arrive at the same conclusion that the Ukrainians looking on, because we speak different languages and stuff, and I couldn't organize a nonviolent protest, but it's nice to know that we're on top of the situation well enough by reading plenty that we get this. And I mean, the festival atmosphere of this thing and how intelligent these protesters are just really amazes me how well they've done this.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, we saw that, the revolution of dignity was very much like this too, until the government, turned it violent. But it's heartwarming. It's people come together, and that Ukrainian sense of humor you could die from. That business that I saw a recording. I think Alan, you saw today. Serhiy Sternenko, who's a commentator, very important person in Ukraine. He does raises tremendous amounts of money for drones and everything. But
And Russians attempted to
yes,
assassinate him
yeah,
twice, so
I think
he's
Alan
pretty
said actually
important.
4 times. He looked earlier. Yeah, he's definitely.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, but he in his video today, he's saying, it's true. They've discovered, yes, that all of these protesters were being paid, and then he shows videos of exactly what you're talking about. People handing out candy and chocolate and pastries and kittens. So all these people, it's absolutely true. They were all paid to be there. As I said,
And
yeah.
the FSB plants, the people who were in the media saying, "Oh, it's all it's all gay, a boy." So then they started doing a gay boy chant.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
they take up every criticism and throw it back at them.
Yeah. Oh my God. I don't know how Ukrainians got to be this way. I mean, they have such a wicked sense of humor. I mean, it's just wonderful. Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And this is part, I think, of what drives Putin and these tin pot dictators, because Ukrainians don't spend a lot of time focusing hate and resentment or whatever. They rip them. They troll the hell out of these people, and that is a lot harder for these guys to take than it is to be hated. Because when you're being trolled, you're being totally dismissed, and it's just delightful.
So, there are some recently arrived Americans in Kyiv. um, Laura Loomer, who's,
And Jake Bros.
and Jake Bro. And I've got to say, you know, if there's one thing I do when I arrive someplace and there's I don't know, there's news to find out about, or there are observations to make. The best place to be is on the outside of the circle looking in. And then just find your way closer and closer to the center of the circle, but with trusted guides. There's just, I mean, especially in a foreign country, you just can't get it or understand it from the moment your train arrives or your plane lands or whatever. You've got to step back and be a true observer. Maybe some Americans can do that, but maybe they can't. I don't know, Robin.
Well, like they say, where there's life, there's hope. We certainly can learn by observing how Ukrainians do things. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, and I've seen some people kind of crapping on her, and I'm no fan of her, of course. But if her reporting in real facts to some of her gullible followers to the point where a few of them wake up and understand what's happening, then that's a good thing. And if you look, also the office of the president of Ukraine is aware of her visit, he had put out a tweet. I think it was like they quote tweeted her, sort of expressing, gratitude that she's there, but also, emphasizing the fact that the importance of overcoming Russian disinformation. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad, and you notice in one of her first tweets since arriving in country, she talked about what had happened at Bucha, and I don't think that was an accident. Hopefully, I suspect, that there's someone from the Ukrainian government that is sort of, I don't want to say chaperone, but kind of guiding, where the places to go, who are the people to talk to, what she's likely to hear, firsthand accounts, that kind of stuff. And so yeah, I mean, someone with that. I mean, it's actually depressing that she has that many followers and that much engagement. But anyway, anyone with that engagement that is cascading truth in terms of what's happening, I think it's a net positive. So I'm glad that I didn't have this on my bingo card coming into this year, but I guess I didn't have a lot of things in my bingo card coming into this year.
Brian, I'll just say yes and no. People need to remember that Laura Loomer promoted Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Work for Russia Today really was not much more than a Russian agent. So this is like saying that, Tokyo Rose reporting about how great a place Australia is, didn't want it and let the Australians have it. I'm not sure I buy it. And
Yeah,
Well,
but
the question is not whether you buy it, because I think the Ukrainians are being smart enough to keep her a little bit at arm's length, and I wouldn't trust her as far as I could throw her. But as long as she is saying things that support Ukraine, there is a possibility that some people will be won over by it. So, I think, yeah, it's distasteful, but I think the Ukrainians are, that you don't want to distance anyone who might be of help. And if she is saying things now that may bring support to Ukraine, it's you might want to go take a shower afterwards. But I think Brian is right. It is probably at this point a net positive, even understanding. And she has actually said recently that she used to hold different attitudes, and seems to, whether it's legit or not, I don't know. But the fact that she's at least saying, that she has changed her mind, whatever. Anyway, Will, go ahead.
Yeah, all good. Let her talk to her silo of people, and change her mind. But she's not coming anywhere close to changing my mind. Don't expect to see her on any of my segments as a a guest.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think
be,
she's going to be
be,
on Volya
because
Radio.
it's her purposes. If you look at her tweets since she's arrived, it's all, she tweets like Trump does. Like none of this is ever. It's all brand new, and well, I guess it's new to her because she never actually looked into it. But this just further shows what a complete shill she was for Russia, a know nothing, and she's only just slightly more than a know nothing now, frankly, and she's using it to support the fact that that at this late date, we're going to somehow turn Trump. Trump's going to be on the side. Great that she's talking to her silo of people. Excellent. But she will get zero support from me for doing the right thing finally after 4.5 years.
Yeah, I think that's right. And, she's also one of those really obnoxious commentators that everything is always 100% about her. And it's so, yeah, I think you're right. It's a let her do her thing. If it brings some positive attention to Ukraine, fine. But yeah, I mean, she's certainly not going to. I don't think we're going to be seeing her on Volya Radio anytime soon. Um,
well, she could do a segment on what not to do when it comes to the use of Botox and plastic surgery. That could be like a PSA,
oh,
right?
meow,
We could
Brian.
we could have I mean, that would be a value add. I mean, I don't know. There
Think
might be
You're right.
I think of this
there
in
might be some vain people in our listenership that maybe could go down a wrong path,
Yeah,
and we would
before they
help
put
them
two
from.
pounds of collagen in their lips,
think of
it would
this
point.
think of
Yeah,
it in Inglorious Bastards terms, Brian. She'll never get, she may have changed her stripes, but she'll never get that swastika taken out of her forehead.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I would not want our listeners to go run afoul of the worst in chemical injection, basal injections, and plastic surgery. And so I would view it as a public service to our listeners to have her and come in and give her testimony.
Well, let's go to Scouts Green here and look to conclude tonight's broadcast in two parts of Volya Radio. Scouts, go ahead.
Yes, I'm sorry I'm coming in breaking. I know all of us have to work and I had to do some work, so I apologize. I wanted to, the thing about, you got to understand about Lower Luma, forgive me if this has already been covered. Like I said, I missed earlier sides of it. Most of us that do this kind of work for Ukraine are more blue than red. And I will tell you that, so this is an easy hate kind of deal. I have never been a fan, and she has obviously been caught for a long time as a useful idiot. Okay, and so I am surprised a little bit about this turn. But here's the thing we need to understand. Number one, she, even if you're on the blue side, you got to understand that turning from a from a Russian useful idiot to at least a useful idiot that is talking pro-Ukraine things. She has a massive amount of followers, massive. Not all of them, Russian bot followers. She's got a lot of followers because I have a lot of red family that are a lot redder than me. I got some MAGA in my family here, and she has a lot of influence. And so anything that brings influence to that side is going to be useful. I would definitely keep careful track, and I would love to put together a interview by Decoding Trolls with her to do an interview and say, how did this happen? Let's walk through this and take a look at, tell me how this happened. He would know the right questions to ask the right way. And two things, two possibilities. Either she's exposed, which I don't think this is the case, or she would give an honest, useful information that would be helpful down the road. I would love to see that. Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. That's a really good point. One of the things that we really need to work on, and even after the hot war is over, may even be more of an issue if Russia isn't totally destroyed, and that's dealing with Russian disinformation and propaganda. It's so many of us in the West are very naive and don't can be easily taken advantage of because we don't see what's happening. Ukrainians know a lot more about this and are more likely to spot it as it comes up. But in knowing how someone like that, if she's on the level, as you're saying, and we don't know, but what took her in the beginning and what changed, it would be interesting to hear. As we're all saying, I don't know that I would trust her as far as I could throw her, but her answers would be interesting to hear.
Well, what I've heard from some Ukrainians today about this visit of Laura Loomer, and we're not going to end the Volya radio space tonight on Laura Loomer, but Stephen Moore, who's spoken to us here, uh, replied to me and Sean Pinner, take the win. It's not a win. And to me, this is like Billy Graham getting up and telling all the hundreds of millions of Christians he's persuaded to be Christian. Got a call from God today? and he told me he doesn't exist. I mean, this is the 180-degree turn that Laura Loomer has taken about Russia's genocidal invasion of Ukraine. So,
What is Alan? What is the benefit?
to Laura
I'm sorry.
Loomer, I would say, you know, sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't.
But I don't understand, Alan, really. What benefit is there to not capitalizing on the fact that she is saying uh, positive things about Ukraine right now? I just I don't see an upside to it. I don't think we have to trust her. I don't think we have to invite her on to speak to us. But I think at this point, it is a net positive.
Well,
You can't you can't choose
well,
you can't choose your friends sometimes.
we'll see. Will, go ahead.
I say we end the show on uh, Jake Bro. If Laura Loomer wants to get my attention, she can call us when she's raised more than $5 million for causes. Look, Jake Bro is one of the most forthright and best commentators. Look, if you watch Jake Bro's, well, you can. I hate to say this, but you can skip all of my 6 episodes each week. All if you don't want to hear me, you can just watch his show at the end of the week. I watch his YouTube periodically to see if I've missed anything. It's like he's channeling me from all week. The exact same things that he's got, many of the same perspectives, and he's over there now on his first trip to Ukraine, doing his little voyage of discovery. I'm not learning anything new from Jake Bro, but Jake Bro is a fundraising machine for Ukraine, the 69th the Sniffing Battalion, and he's the guy that we ought to be focusing on, an American making his first trip to Ukraine, because Jake Bro's the real deal and has raised, as I say, more than $5 million. I wish I could just scratch the edge of his capability to raise funds.
Yeah, he is amazing. Have you seen Al? And I'll have to right back over to you. Have you seen? He has a video just today of arriving in Kiev, and it was just charming because he's so incredibly happy to be in Kiev, and so you could just see his enthusiasm bubbling over. It was really a wonderful thing. It's hard to believe he's never been to Ukraine before. Now it must have. I would imagine this is going to be an incredible visit for him to finally get to see all these places that he's poured so much of his energy and caring into. Alan, go ahead.
And like us, it'll make his fundraising so much more effective going into the future.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Well, maybe
Let
we
me
can.
just say this.
Oh, Scouts,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I my I'm not a fan of hers either. I'm just saying 1.7 million followers, okay? And and the point is we got to be careful. We got to be really careful about who we chose to hold grudges against here. This war is going to be over sometime, and we got to figure this out. And I see parts of her discussions having to do with signs of success. So this obviously I have no say in this. I'm just suggesting to you that might be something. Consider them both. Get them both on. This is a great platform, and it has a lot of influence, and it could have a lot more, especially as we get into the fourth quarter here. That's all I'm saying, and I'll leave it alone. Thank you guys for everything you do. Thanks for all the good work here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Scouts. And I mean, the one possibility is that, like some other people, she's beginning to realize she wasn't on the winning side. So it's a good time to switch over to the side she thinks is going to be winning, so that she can say that she said she knew all the time. Let's go. Civil Squares. I'll go over to you.
Civil Squares, unmute your mic. Well, Robin, I don't want to leave a speaker hanging. But
Yeah, just having connectivity problems. Yeah.
yeah, but we've carried on here at Volya Radio tonight through part 1 and part 2 of the show, with an unfortunate break in the middle there because of a Twitter disconnection. But this has been a great show. We've been able to cover the major news from Ukraine today, and that is the appointment of a new commanding general, General Drapatyi, replacing General Syrskyi, and a new commander of the ground forces. I don't think changes in Ukraine have come to an end by any means today. So stay tuned. Stay tuned to Volya Radio. Stay tuned to your trusted sources for news from Ukraine for the rest of the week. And as always, share Volya Radio, sign in to the Volya Radio archive on Spotify, listen to episodes you may have missed. And with that, Robin, I was going to give Civil Squares one more chance, but he hasn't quite made it up. So,
Yeah, I think he must be having connectivity problems. I just wanted to say before we drop, thank you everyone. We have raised $255 in the last couple of hours. I will match that, so that's going to be 510. That's going to go to help our friends at Etain Slovyansk and SBU Alpha, whatever else War Dogo, any other last minute requests that War Dogo has to answer. So thank you very much. You guys are absolutely the best, and I really appreciate it. I will give it another 10, 15 minutes. I'll do the podcast as soon as we get off, and then I will double check to see if any more donations will come in. I will that match those two. And with that, Alan, I think we're going to say Slava Ukraini.
Herom Slava.
Slava.
Slava Nazi.
Mergvorham.
Smirfaham.
Thank you, everybody. And Skoro Pabachimus. We'll see you all soon. Bye-bye. Night.
Do перемоги. Побачимось.
Thank you for joining us on the radio.